Amen.
Boy, we keep inviting Mary and she keeps showing up, right? She never tires of our invitations and she never says no. So how beautiful that she's here at our beck and call on her Our Lady's Day, right? Saturday. Those of you that get the Magnificat magazine, there was a little article just for today about Our Lady's Day. Somebody's shaking their head, so I commend that to you for your reading. Before I go too much further, I want to make a comment about the younger people that are with us today. I happened to eat lunch with a couple of them. And even without words, their witness was a great boost to me. And I know to all of us that are here. And I just want to say, without looking at these young people and embarrassing them, it's such, we that are a little bit further on the journey, it's encouraging to us and it fills us with hope. And we just believe, like, maybe if that was me, I'd be somewhere different, and maybe I would be entering this particular retreat in a different way than I am today. I feel like I'm kind of have to catch up a little bit. So we love youth, and the best part of who we are, our souls, is eternally youthful, right? So we have something that's going to be eternally youthful. But yeah, those of us that are further down the journey, we thank you, young women, and keep coming to these kinds of things. Not just for yourself, but you come for us too. So thank you. All right. After lunch, that's always the tricky one, right? Everybody looks pretty perky. You know, the vegetables and fruit, boy, that wakes us up and keeps us awake. So this time is going to be the back side of that first sheet, where there's a few images of Mary. We're going to be speaking about the titles of Mary that have to do with roses and apparitions. Some may surprise you, some not. So even in the first century, the church was showing images of roses and connecting that to Mary already, right? Even in iconography, the rose was being shown as that was, which showed virtue. So they would use that in iconography to maybe of a saint, but it would show the virtue of that saint. So all of these things were connecting so early for the rose. So it's no surprise that much of it would land then with Our Lady, right? Who is at the height of all these things that we go for, right? And one of the things about a rose, and you'll all be able to take one home before you go, so keep your eye out for the one that you want, the color that you want. And I've got the little tubes back here, so remind me. But they're all a little bit different, and even some that were a little bit hidden yesterday are so much more full, right? It's the way of the rose, and it's just like this never-ending goodness of a rose, right? Some flowers you can see the middle right away. They don't have to open much. But a rose, there's so much mystery with that, isn't there? And there's a delicateness with that. There's almost a velvet feel to the petals that seems to be different than other flowers, right? So many things. The fragrance as well. There was a time I heard that the fragrance of roses was taken out. Somehow science took it out because it was too fragrant, right? But these have fragrance, so I don't know, the scientists miss these. But people, because of that, say, and this is the way of Mary, right? There was that hiddenness of Jesus in her womb, but just the hiddenness of who she is and to us. It's just this ever unfolding who she is to us and how her fragrance affects us. So it's a beautiful way, and why then it would seem right that the rose would represent our dear Holy Mother. She's incomparable. So again, we've spoken more than once saying that roses are considered the queen of flowers. That white symbolized Mary, and the red blooms, it is said, we talked about martyrdom earlier in I think the first conference, but it is said that they blushed when Mary kissed them in heaven, right? It's a beautiful legend to think about it in that way. But in the Middle Ages, they used roses a lot in the purification ceremony. So there's a link there as well for our faith as we look at those kinds of things in the Middle Ages. Mother Mary is the ultimate symbol of purity, and so that kind of connects with her. And the white in particular with her purity and holiness, and also her joys. And the red, as said, with suffering and passion, her sacrifice. Pink indicates more of gratitude and peace. Some of these things will make sense as we speak about the rose colors in the apparitions of Mary. And lavender meant a wonder, an awe, and a change for the better. And then yellow is associated with glory. And again, we know there's yellow roses coming up in one of the apparitions that we're going to talk about, right? Those of you that are familiar with Dante's epic poem in the 1300s, he had a guide, Beatrice. Without going into too much detail, she invited him to contemplate the inhabitants of heaven, but especially Mary. And this is what Beatrice said about Mary. There is the rose in which the divine word became flesh. Right? So we're getting that at that time in the poetry and the heart of Dante. In the Litany of Loretto, that one was written more 1587. It invokes Our Lady as Rosa Mystica, the mystical rose. We'll talk a little bit more about that in just a bit. And again, the Litany of Loretto is that beautiful litany that the church has approved. There's lots of for us to use together through the church. And there's lots of litanies and lots of prayers that we utter, but this one was special. It's set apart as special. And within that is the title of Our Lady, Mystical Rose. She's been venerated under that title for a long time in the church, since independence. Okay, now maybe take a look at the top of your page. And this is one of many depictions of the Immaculate Heart of Mary. And one of the distinctive features of that is that her beautiful heart, which is on the outside, right? It's not held within, that it's hidden from us, same as the Sacred Heart. Too much love to keep it inside, right? And in a way, too much purity, I suppose, to keep it inside. It comes out to greet us, to meet us, to affect us. And how is it depicted? Oftentimes with a garland of roses, isn't it? But then at the same time, there's sort of this confusing aspect that it's got this big sword stabbed in the heart, right? So there is sorrow in the heart of Mary, you know that. And we travel that way with her. And the rosary helps us travel deeper and understand things a little bit better. That's one of the beautiful fruit of the rosary recitation and prayer. But here, the roses kind of outnumber the sword, right? Sometimes we see that picture of the sorrowful heart of Mary with lots of swords, right? And sometimes that heart still has roses on it, right? So in this particular one, this is one of my favorite renditions of the Immaculate Heart of Mary. It just, she's giving our attention to it. But she's inviting us really in the way that she moves her hand toward her heart. And she has her index finger kind of pointed, but she's pointing to the roses, isn't she? And I think she's saying to us, there is sorrow. I hold sorrow. You will hold sorrow. Being followers of Christ, sorrow comes with that. But there is an incredible fragrance, and there's a beauty that comes with it as well. And that's where she seems to be pointing our attention, at least in my sense of that, rather than really pointing at the sword, although we notice that right away, because that's unusual, and that makes us squirm a little bit. But that's not the way of her life, and that's not what she teaches us. The lilies are hers, and so it's to remind us of the character of Mary, who she is, and who she is for us. It's just lovely. That's all. So the second The second image is, and the next two images are that mystical rose that I spoke about. And the mystical rose in the third one over, so that was painted by a religious sister. It's my favorite image of mystical rose, and we talked about that rose that's got the 5 petals, right? And that at St. Peter's in Omaha, they have that above Our Lady statue. They have it in confessionals and so forth. And I just think it's so beautiful how Sister really fanned that over the whole sky to encompass Mary. And so that's kind of the typical view of the mystical rose, which you can't see very much, but there is a rose on top of Jesus, baby Jesus. So I put Sister's name so that you can Google it and get a better sense of that image. But that's kind of the essence of the mystical rose there. She is hidden. Newman talked about her as that she's mystical because she's hidden in a sense. And we don't know, she's assumed into heaven, right? We don't know, there was no grave, and we believe there would be if she was buried. And so she never was hidden in the earth, but hidden in heaven in a sense. And she remains there, but reveals herself, as we'll see in some of the apparitions, right? Or to its left is an apparition that happened with the mystical rose. And that one was happened where Mary appeared, and there were 3 flowers that were over her. And they were gold and white and pink, I believe it was. And so this also is another way of speaking about Rosa Mystica. And so if you look it up, you'll kind of see lots of different images with that, both of those kinds of renditions. So the apparition took place in 1947. And at first, when Mary appeared, there were 3 swords. There were not roses there, but there were swords. And they were they were because of an unworthy celebrations of the Holy Mass. And then the second one was infidelity to the priestly vocation, and which is related really. And then the third one, also related, is betrayal of the faith. And so Our Lady was asking for prayer and sacrifice and penance for those 3 sins. But then when she appeared again, the 3 roses appeared. And so she brought this message of hope. It's like, with those 3 things I've asked you to do, there's hope. And the white is really the spirit of prayer, and it's red, not pink, is a spirit of sacrifice. And then one was kind of a gold and yellow, and that was the spirit of penance and conversion. So that's offered when you consider Rosa Mystica, that will come up as an apparition. But the other one is a little bit more from an ancient title of Mary, again in the Litany of Loretto. Let's see. So the next image over, the very last one on the right side, that one was one I just mentioned a little while ago. We were speaking about the rosary. And that one is in Father Howe's book. And it's a bigger thing. But again, I have the artist here, so you can Google that and get a better sense. And what I totally love about this, there's many pictures of Our Lady, or Madonna of the Rosary, as she might be called. But this one, I don't know, just does something to my heart. You can't see it all that well, but if you see a bigger version of it, you will. Jesus with his left hand, so he's got his left hand kind of in toward his mother, and he has this clump of roses. And what it reminds me of is those clump of dandelions that came to my front door, right? In my little people that were under 3 feet tall at the time. And this clump comes up, and then, they kind of smush it in your hand, and then they run out and play again, And I just think this is Jesus, like with this clump of roses. It just like flops it in Mary's hand. I just love that. But with the right hand, he's crowning Our Lady. with that garland of roses. And again, this is a depiction of Madonna of the Rosary. So I just think it's this sense that it's gifting from Jesus, and but it's esteeming, you know, Mary in the process. And I just think the artist should go to the head of the class with that one. It's just the best. I just love it. And of course, it's older. It's just got the 15 mysteries, but you know, somebody could probably put the one more down there at the bottom. But I would ask you to just go look it up. It's really quite lovely. And things like this can just move us really to desire the rosary more, just to understand a little bit more about, you know, how our Lord is seen, or how this artist through prayer and paint helped us to understand something. All the angelic figures that are in it, and just how all of heaven and earth is involved in the rosary, right? She's the Madonna of the Rosary, and everybody wants to be involved, and she's queen of it all. So I commend that one to you as well. Okay, let's see what else. Sometimes Mary is just called simply Our Lady of the Roses. And that's how she's referred to in a title that is given to her. There's a statue right in front of here. A friend of mine from San Francisco sent me that a year or so ago. And she says, isn't this beautiful, Our Lady of the Roses? You know, that's how she introduced that statue to me. So that was the simple title of that. And so it's just no further explanation needed so much. It's just Mary has a simple title, and we understand it at a level that we need to. So the apparitions on the bottom are quite interesting. And in these three particular apparitions, roses appear. What is very familiar to us is Our Lady of Guadalupe. And we know the story where he's asked to prove what he's saying. And Our Lady says, oh, you're going to find roses at the top of this mountain, right? And Juan Diego's thinking, right. And, you know, it's cold and things are not blooming at that time. And she tells them, don't open it up until you see the bishop. She knew what was going to happen, right? So he does that, and of course we know what happens. He opens it up, and all these roses come tumbling down, and then what it's cushioning is the image of Our Lady with so much detail and so many things that, you know, people have spent their life just studying that particular image. So it's something we kind of know. It's like, yeah, I know Our Lady of Guadalupe. I kind of know the story. But when I was kind of preparing for this time with you, it just became bigger for me. I thought, okay, Mary's got roses there, and where else? And then I moved to Our Lady of Lourdes. There's a beautiful statue in the chapel, and with the blue sash and the white, as she's described by Saint Bernadette. And remember, one of the details is that she appeared in this cave, but it had wild roses up and down the cave. So you can see that depicted in this particular image here. What she had in her feet, as described by Bernadette, were yellow roses. Then I looked up and I caught sight of the cave, where I saw a lady wearing a lovely white dress with a bright belt, and on top of each of her feet was a pale yellow rose, the same color as her rosary beads. So she's Our Lady at this name, which Saint Bernadette was a big word. Didn't know what that meant. The interesting thing about the statue, though, in this chapel is that one of the slippers has a red rose on it, Father.
Yep.
So I'm not quite sure, but anyway, the other one has a yellow one though, so we're all good there. But the yellow, again, it indicates glory and connected to the Immaculate Conception as well. Okay, this last one may be one that you're familiar with, maybe not. It's Our Lady of La Salette. And this was in 1846. So the juxtaposition of that, Our Lady of Lourdes was 1858. So it was a little bit before that time. And there were a brother and sister, Melanie was 14, her brother Maximilian was 11. And they were tending sheep in the French Alps. They were children that were not well schooled, they had very little education. They had very little practice of their religion. But they were out tending sheep, and they saw this really bright light. And of course, it attracted them, right? It's unusual, it's different. So they went and they found Our Lady sitting on a rock as depicted here, and she was crying. So they went over there, and then she stood up. And they described her as having roses through this crown. She had a crown on, you can see it in the picture, and you can see that there's all this light emanating from her, and there's roses around the crown. And then when she stood up, they noticed that there was roses in a V shape, and then down her back. So it's like two strands, and then a strand of roses around the waist. You can see that in the image as well. And then underneath her feet, you can see that she's standing like on a bed of roses almost. But when she walked, apparently these roses kind of came with her as the children just. Our Lady for sure, but she had color, and this is and she is said is that nobody goes to church. They're engaging in things that and so she told the children that there needs to be a return to prayer and reconciliation, a very similar echo to all of her apparitions. And of course, the children weren't believed at first, and then things were proved out, and it is an approved apparition. And there was somebody went to this place and they kind of chipped off part of the rock. I don't know if it's to keep the rock or what, but when they did that, a spring came forward, and so healings have come from this place as well, where she sat, and that spring arose in that place. So Mary has come to us in many different ways. In these particular three, it was such a burst of roses. I felt like I had to share these with the whole group. I don't know if you've seen that children's book. It's called Our Lady's Wardrobe, and it speaks about when Mary was on earth, she really dressed quite plainly, right, and more as peasant. But when she is asked to come back to visit us, she's got a wardrobe and that she can open up, and and it's a beautiful book because it explains all of the things that Mary was wearing when she came for a particular apparition. So, and I commend that to you, especially if you have grandchildren. It's called Our Lady's Wardrobe, and it's a very big book and beautifully colored and painted. And aside from the visual part of it, it really gives a sense of that divine planner that's sending Mary at particular times. Right, and she's all beautiful woman that's crying somewhere, and has and is willing to show these children for our benefit, for our greater benefit. And just one little aside that I've connected to Seven Sisters, those of you that are Seven Sisters, Father Joseph Johnson has a devotion to Our Lady of La Salette, and he has a great fervor in his heart about Sunday, and you don't have to. It's amazing how he can just fit it right in there, but he really encourages in such a pastoral way for us to come back to Sunday, to save Sunday, to esteem Sunday for what it really is and what it should be. And, so he may have been the one that told me about Our Lady of Wassala actually in the beginning. But, it's something that we struggle with as a culture, that's to be sure, and need to be replacing. Okay, so images speak 1,000 words, and sometimes we just get a few of them right away, and sometimes it takes a while to spend some time with them. So what I'd like you to do right before we're going to go to adoration, and maybe use this as part of your adoration, is to take this sheet and spend a little time employing a Visio Divina. So instead of using Lexio, which is the word, I want you to use your vision. And you know, there's lots of examples in our church history. Look at Francis of Assisi, who was praying before a crucifix, and it turned his whole life into the mission of God, because he was there and he was meditating on that, and he knew what he had to do, right? And even Teresa of Avila. So she was 40 years old. So she had been in the convent for what, 20 years probably, maybe more. And she was walking and she saw an image of Jesus tied to a pillar, scourging. And she had a complete conversion. And she said she just understood so much from that moment on. And this is somebody who's been formed already. Right? And so I think we might think, well, that was for when I was younger, maybe I could have had something like that. Not so, right? Yeah, we just have to be aware and alert, and maybe taking these today, something great will convert in your heart. You don't know how these things. And so that's what I would do, is I'd like you to employ some busy to do that, and then we'll go to process that. Glory to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, world without end. Lady of the Council, pray
for us.
And Father, are there more books of the pearls?
There are. Yeah. Are we out? Okay.
Exposition will be, I don't know, after or shortly after, and then chapter of the Divine Mercy at 3 and then